Near the very top of Project Drawdown's top 100 list, in fact, their number 4 solution is plant-rich diets. They quote a World Resources Council report which calls for ambitious animal protein reduction. For developed countries, that means eating far less meat, dairy, and eggs. The amount of animal products we currently consume is excessive, opulent overconsumption, far more than our bodies need. On average, adults require 50 grams of protein each day. In the United States and Canada, the average adult consumes more than 90 grams of protein per day. In the late 90s and early 2000s, food fashions began to re-examine traditional cultures. Writing in the New York Times in 2008, Mark Bittman said, "Remember that most traditional styles of cooking use meat as a condiment or a treat." That comment stuck with me, meat as a condiment. So different from a porterhouse steak plopped on a plate, so different from a quarter pounder, so different from meat as cornerstone of the American meal. It's all about perspective, that shift in consciousness. It's not no steak ever again. Rather, the porterhouse is properly a once-a-year celebratory banquet meal. Meat as a condiment reminds us that traditional cultures might use a bit of bacon in the pot as they cooked beans, or a stew bone in the water as they made a vegetable-dominant soup. These are examples of meat portions in plant-rich dishes. There are additional guidelines. The World Resources Council offers a menu of solutions. These focus on how our food is grown with respect to food supply, land use, and greenhouse gas mitigation. They also consider promoting economic development and alleviating poverty, empowering women farmers, and protecting freshwater resources. This is the kind of information you can ask about when you buy from a local farmer. How do they grow? How efficiently do they use land, water? What are they doing to restore natural ecosystems? This is the kind of information you're unlikely to get if you buy from a mega corporation, although we can guess what their answers would be. But what do we turn to fill our bellies instead of meat? The answer isn't piling on more wheat, corn, and other grains, which come with big problems in big agriculture. Issues such as land use, water use, monocropping, chemical applications, and big economy controls. The answer lies in that category that is nearly absent from the mainstream American plate: vegetables. Now, food writer Michael Pllan weighed in on this with his catchy slogan: "Eat food, not too much, mostly plants." What does that mean? Well, eat food meant something your great-grandma would recognize as food, like goose squeeze from a tube would never qualify. Pllan emphasized that high fructose corn syrup, unpronounceable preservatives, and flavor enhancers weren't food. He called them edible food-like substances. The mostly plants part aligns with the ideas we've already covered: plant-rich and meat as a condiment. Pllan's not too much reminds us that the quantity we consume is part of the overall solution. The World Resources Council states it as reduced growth in demand. This is Holmgren's energy descent. Now recall biocapacity, recall Holmgren's fair shares. Those of us in wealthy nations have normalized the idea of gigantic portion size to the point that our sense of what is appropriate is completely distorted. It's time for us to reskill, to reclaim knowledge, to scale back to what's appropriate. The idea of Meatless Mondays is to decrease the amount of meat we consume. The practice calls for eating vegetarian or vegan at least one day a week. The city of Los Angeles endorsed Meatless Mondays in 2012. Other people have created versions of this, such as Mark Bittman's VB6, which calls for eating vegan before 6 p.m. In Bittman's plan, you eat vegan all day long and eat whatever you wish for dinner. It limits your meat portions to just that one daily meal. All of these are simply techniques to get us moving toward those plant-rich diets. Now, as we mentioned veganism, recall that many Project Drawdown solutions involve animals integrated into the food ecosystems. It's important to remember that the environmental problems with meat consumption are issues of overconsumption. They're biocapacity issues, issues of overshoot. So campaigns like Meatless Mondays aren't saying we all have to go pure vegan. Rather, they're attempts to design catchy ways we can reduce the quantity of animal-based food that we eat. It circles back to World Resource Council's ambitious animal protein reduction. But remember the earthworm and all their friends. When plants pass through the digestive systems of animals, that biological process is part of nature's cleanup systems. Nature counts on the hooves of herd animals to break up turf, to churn in manure, so that the ecosystem of soil organisms can thrive. A thriving population of soil organisms seems to be the mechanism that nature uses to sequester carbon. And remember, Project Drawdown relies on some form of building living soil for nearly 45% of the 1,051 gigatons in their top 100 solutions. Natural cycles depend on a succession of organisms, some of which are predatory and carnivorous. All of this is to say, if you eat real food, living organisms are part of the process. So remember that diversity is a key feature of resilience. Emphasize vegetables and enjoy life. Now, gourmet chefs such as Dan Barber, Yotam Adelangi, and Joshua McFadden are inventing new recipes which are vegetable dominant, which uplift the humble vegetable to the height of fine dining. But the deepest answers might be tucked away on your great-grandma's recipe cards. Carlo Petrini launched the slow food movement in reaction to megacorporate attempts to bring fast food restaurants into Italy, a country where people have deep pride in their local food. The slow food movement draws attention to the quality of food, our enjoyment of it, and the rich cultural associations that food can have. Good, clean, and fair is the slow food rallying cry. It's Petrini's idea that food should taste good, which leads to gastronomical pleasure. It should be clean, which means free from pesticides and pollutants, thus sustainable. And it should be fair, priced in such a way that its growers can make a living wage, thus free from exploitation. Petrini emphasizes that the finest recipes of our regional traditions have the same characteristics: the common memory of hunger past and the knack of women for making a lot with a little. The slow food movement is a campaign of revaluation. The slow food movement calls us to slow down and appreciate what we put in our mouth. It aligns perfectly with Pllan's food your great-grandma would recognize. In fact, she'd probably be overjoyed that you suddenly valued what she'd been telling you all along. The clean part of the slow food motto offers specifics for home growns, earth care, and people care. Slow Food's Fair addresses the umbrella problems of the economy and disenfranchisement. Through it all, the richness of the slow food movement and their attitude of savoring your food shows us new ways we can enjoy life. Suddenly, the little guy bouncing on the trampoline of resilience has a smile on his face.